Hi, good morning. How's everyone doing today? Had coffee? Yeah. Awesome. Woo! Awesome. I guess I'm the only diplomat at this conference excited about, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but excited to be amongst very smart people like all of you. I'm very thrilled to be presenting to this audience today. My name is Mahvash Siddiqui, and I'm an American diplomat. I work at the State Department. But before I go ahead, I want to make sure that you understand that my views are essentially my personal views. They're not the views of the State Department, they're not the views of the US government, and they're not the views of any institution that might own. So I have a decade of experience in foreign service. I've served in 10 different tours around the world, including Washington, D.C., and I'm currently in New York. And I specialize in science, technology, economic issues, as well as multilateral treaty negotiations. So today I'm going to be discussing two things. I'm going to give you a retrospective perspective of how artificial intelligence could have been used to curb ISIS in Iraq, one of the postings that I had. And I'm going to also look at the future potential of artificial intelligence in diplomatic statecraft. So I'll take you back to Iraq. 2013-2014, my Iraq posting involved me serving the US government in the capacity of an environment, science, technology, and health officer. That involved me working on a nuclear decommissioning project. It involved me working on a polio vaccination campaign, and I was working other 15 issues, including water issues. One of the most critical issues that I was handling was water security in Iraq. So MOSUL Dam was one of the biggest concerns. MOSUL Dam is one of the critical infrastructures in Iraq, which is of great interest not just to Iraq, but to the United States for the stability of Iraq, but also because 70% of the hydropower power in Iraq comes from the MOSUL Dam. And MOSUL Dam basically supports not just electricity generation, but there's thousands of multinational companies working in Iraq in the oil and gas sector, and they rely on the water of the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers to rig for oil and supply oil to the world. So it's a pretty critical dam for that purpose. As I was watching the dam for security features, etc., August 2014, I learned from an Iraqi dam engineer that MOSUL Dam was captured by ISIS. It sent shockwaves into our system. The US Embassy was grappling with this, the Iraqi National Security Council was grappling with this concern, and the world writ large has suddenly focused on MOSUL Dam and what's going to happen with it. How did we get here? So essentially, in 2011, there was a massive US military withdrawal. Our president had, at the time, had pulled back our military, and Iraq was assumed to be stable. When Iraq was assumed to be stable, Western media was no longer interested in Iraq, and they pulled their media houses out of Iraq, so there was no international reporting. There's a ton of local reporting, but no international reporting. What that meant was it was a perfect storm because there was an underbelly of violence, and ISIS decided to take over and leverage that vacuum. So ISIS first started appearing in Syria. They entered Syria in mid-2013. And they started taking over various dams and barrages, playing with water, essentially playing with water, weaponizing water as it was a weapon of warfare. And essentially, I was very concerned when I started watching Syria because it's a bordering country to Iraq. And I started flagging for our leadership and can't believe who, but that this is concerning and they might penetrate Iraq because they were so close to the Iraq-Western border. And lo and behold, ISIS did show up around December 2013, penetrated western parts of Iraq, and started taking over smaller towns. there was a pattern. They started to be smaller dams. And I was flagging to cable saying we need to worry about the situation, but it was just me and a small team of environmental science, technology, and health experts. So the flagging from the US government that we need to do something about the situation. And in 2014, as of June, as ISIS had capsized and captured lots of territory in Iraq, and finally in August took over the Mosul Dam. Mosul Dam is considered the most dangerous dam in the world, according to a lot of academics, because it has two concerns. We're looking at two scenarios here. It has the but the vulnerability to self-breach because it's formed on a foundation of gypsum, a very soluble compound. So it has cracks and fissures that just show up randomly, and it needs manual labor to go ahead and fix it on a daily basis. The other possibility scenario we're looking at was ISIS would go ahead and breach the dam, and we're talking about either scenario would result in tsunami-like waves racing towards Baghdad, our assets, the Iraqi assets, multinational assets, and killing possibly 11 million people in its path. Here's a picture of the malign influence of ISIS in Iraq and Syria within 8 months. They captured all the territory in red. So could AI have helped with the situation? Could AI have, one, curbed the rise of ISIS? Could AI have, two, prevented or given us an early warning system regarding Mosul Dam? So with the early detection technology proposal, if we had placed in about 20 plus, I don't know the exact number, that's classified information, but there's a lot of border security checkpoints all around Iraq, bordering Turkey, Syria, Iran, and Kuwait. And in each of those border security checkpoints, if we have provided facial recognition technology, audio and video surveillance, as well as other document surveillance systems, such as, when visitors or entrants into a country come in, you bring in documents. And if there's a fraudulent document, we needed a system that would flag that. But we're talking about gazillions of data input in those security checkpoints. So it would have been great to have an artificial intelligence system to process that gazillions of data and essentially let the decision makers know about any flags, any anomalies. Now, ISIS came from 60 different countries around the world. A lot of them were in Europe. And they did not look like the Iraqis. Some had different clothing, even if they were disguised, their documents may not have been similar to the Iraqis. We could have flagged so many anomalies, given the information gap, given that we didn't have US military watching that arena, artificial intelligence could have been the stopgap solution. Now, monitoring a Mosul Dam, it's a manual, laborious process on a daily basis. You have these very smart PhD dam engineers and others go in and tinker with the dam, look at it with X-ray diffraction technology and make sure there's no cracks. And then they have to fix and repair it and run it on a daily basis, making sure that the dam won't breach. That manual, laborious process could be replaced or augmented with remote sensors, satellite imagery, and other kinds of hydraulic monitoring systems. But then you're collecting gazillions of data. How do you process the data and let decision makers know that you need to intervene when there's an anomaly? Artificial intelligence could have processed all the data, and then Washington decision makers, as well as the Iraqi National Security Council, could have the red flags to send the right people to intercept and resolve the issue. Before I jump into the future applications of artificial intelligence, I just want to say I think it was leading luck in our favor that the Mosul Dam did not get breached. We were very lucky. My team and I, a small footprint of people, basically thought on our feet. I was calculating piezometer readings, hydrological data, and a genetic engineer by background before I became a diplomat. But thankfully, those physics skills helped, and we were able to get our different defense sector counterparts, as well as the Iraqis and the Kurdish Peshmerga, or swift on their feet, to go ahead and save most of that. Now I'm going to discuss the future application of AI in diplomacy. We diplomats, American diplomats, deal with a ton of rich data. We talk about gazillions, I don't know the exact computer term for that, many terabytes. And essentially, our job is to sense the environment that we are posted in. We're supposed to predict issues. We're supposed to prescribe a solution to certain problems, geopolitical problems, economic concerns, corruption in certain countries. And essentially, the predictive, prescriptive analysis could easily be done by artificial intelligence. It would take about millions of me to process the kind of data that we're facing today. And AI is definitely a solution for that. So in terms of geopolitical conflicts that I personally predicted, just because I'm not gloating about this, but after 15 years in the diplomatic arena, you kind of become a seasoned diplomat and you're able to read the tea leaves. And so I predicted that there would be a rise of internationalism in India, or Brexit would happen, or the recent conflict in Afghanistan. It was predictable. But it was just me and a few outliers in the US government who had predicted. Now, if we had artificial intelligence, a scientific system combined with the art of diplomacy, we could have flagged these geopolitical events to our decision makers ahead of time so we can make the right decisions and intervene as necessary. Typically, before any conflict, you have a war of words. The narratives, the information domain, that's what the military calls it, starts spiking up, and then things get to critical mass and go kinetic. Mob violence ensues. So artificial intelligence would have been a great tool to score through social media, through historical behavior of autocratic rulers, despots, you name it. Is a great predictor of future pattern behavior. And artificial intelligence could have scored through the gazillions of data that me and 1,000 diplomats, under-resourced, could not have done. For example, Brexit, my personal way of doing things was I did not want to sit in London and talk to audiences in Oxford and Cambridge, the Golden Triangle. My job was to be informative to the US government and do them a favor by talking to people outside the Golden Triangle. I spoke to farmers, I spoke to student unions, I spoke to people in Birmingham, Lincolnshire, Wales, you name it. And when you start gathering that intelligence, you realize that people actually wanted Brexit. But it was just me and a few outlier diplomats who said that if we had a scientific tool like AI, that for decision makers would have been critical. And secondly, one of the critical areas that I see in the future application of artificial intelligence is in the consular domain. All diplomats have to do visa adjudications around the world. I did a few tours around the world. One of them was India. I encountered a lot of fraudulent documents in the H-1B and student visa arenas. Instead of building bridges with the local communities or focusing on my job or working with host country partners to build a civil society or what have you, I spend a lot of time just vetting those documents. And that vetting of documents can happen through natural language processing and other AI tools that can replace the laborious work that consular officers have to do. And I did my 51,000 visas, and perhaps that made a beast out of me. And AI could also be pivoted to work on science diplomacy issues. The US government is very concerned about climate change, as well as wildlife trafficking, illegal fishing, etc. I hosted the two largest social conservation hackathons in London involving lots of coders and lots of subject matter experts, and the Zoo Hackathon, which helps curb wildlife trafficking. The winners, known as Odin, essentially used AI to refine camera traps in forest ranges in Africa. Huge benefit to the forest rangers. So before I end, I just want to say, artificial intelligence combined with diplomacy could help us resolve national security goals. We cannot do this alone. We definitely need to lean on tools in an environment which is challenged by information overload. And we cannot be replaced by AI either, because you need the art and science of diplomacy to make the policy in place. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I'm happy to take any questions.
We have time for a few audience questions coming to the left front corner here.
Hi, very interesting talk. Thank you. I'm just curious, on the good side and the bad side, what is the biggest thing that is supporting your efforts to bring AI to your work? And what is the biggest hindrance or pushback you're getting in trying to get this implemented?
That's a great question. Again, I want to caveat by saying I'm not speaking on behalf of the US Department of State, but what I've seen as a diplomat in our arena is that we don't have many STEM people in our field. So, even if we do bring in contractors and others who are STEM people, we have to be able to message to bureaucrats in a very simple, stupid manner. That's basically what the challenge is. It's on the good side, we have started using or leveraging artificial intelligence to some extent in countering disinformation. I used to be the acting director of the Iran's directorate of the organization called the Political Engagement Center, which is part of the State Department. And we were watching a lot of Iranian bots and trolls on the internet using amplifying certain negative narratives about the United States, done by other malign actors, like Russian actors as well. So that required the use of artificial intelligence, and I think there's, as I have demonstrated, many good potential uses of it, especially for climate change concerns, illegal fishing, which is a big problem, ocean conservation, wildlife trafficking, you name it. So, absolutely.
Another question right over here.
So you mentioned making it stupid simple kind of thing for people. So how have you seen trust being built in AI as well as the change management piece of it?
How are these trends being built?
Yeah, like trust within
Right.
the government as well as the change management that you have to implement these.
You kind of need a sort of early believers, somebody with a science and tech background, in the past that they became a diplomat, that sort of thing. But you could also just show a solutions-based approach where, for instance, there was a group of DARPA analysts who had predicted the fall of Iraq within 6 months from 2013, and I found it after the fact. But when they did present an analysis and shared it with some generals in the Pentagon, they were like, oh my gosh, this is actually a very useful tool, and I wish we had it. So, sort of showing a solutions-based approach kind of helps. And I'm talking to their own trying to talk as well. So.
We have time for one more quick question. We may have one right over here.
Hey, thanks for a great presentation. So you were saying there were a lot of natural language processing that could help, but right now, for example, in Ukraine, we're seeing that it's not just the words of truth, but also a lot of confusion, but also propaganda by both sides to try to spin their narrative. Do you think the AI could help us find what the truth is, or do you think the AI would be even more vulnerable because it doesn't have the same inbuilt filter like the expert has to understand what's true versus what's, narratives that are trying to build.
No, I mean, that's an excellent question. Like I said, the tool is just a tool and it's a scientific tool, but you need behind that somebody who's the artist, somebody who's the artistic understanding, like a data scientist, you understand the diplomatic arena, you have a seasoned understanding of geopolitics and essentially political science, and then you're able to then combine that with AI and say, the tool's telling the truth. I mean, and able to figure out the outliers. So essentially, it requires sort of a synergy between the two, science and diplomacy or AI and diplomacy in order to curb something like